The chamber was massive, carved from ancient stone that predated most civilizations in the galaxy. 17 species had representatives here, seated in a circle that symbolized equality. But today, equality felt like a lie. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the human section, her hands folded calmly on the table before her. She had been listening for 6 hours. 6 long hours of accusations, complaints, and barely concealed threats. Her translator device whispered alien words into her ear, converting them into something she could understand. The tone needed no translation. They were angry, they were scared, and they blamed humanity for both. High Arbiter Zekthon stood at the center of the chamber. He was Carthene, a species that looked like someone had crossed a bear with a lizard and given it 4 arms. His scales gleamed under the lights, dark green with hints of gold. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like thunder. For 40 years we welcomed humanity into the Concordat, Zekthon said. His 4 hands gestured broadly, encompassing the entire assembly. We shared our technology. We opened trade routes. We treated them as equals despite their youth. And how have they repaid our trust? He paused for effect. Elena kept her expression neutral. She had heard this speech 3 times already today with minor variations. They expand without restraint, Zekthon continued. 53 systems now fly human flags. They colonize worlds at a rate that alarms us all, but that is not the true problem. The true problem is what they do to our people. A murmur ran through the chamber. Representatives from a dozen species nodded agreement. They steal our citizens, a Vryn delegate hissed. The Vryn looked like walking mantises, tall and thin with compound eyes that glittered. Millions of my people have emigrated to human worlds. They abandoned their duties, their families, their culture. Mine as well, added a Hecelian. The Hecelians were squat and powerful, built like walking boulders. Our youth see human entertainment, human freedom, human opportunity, and they forget their heritage. It is cultural poison. Zekthon raised one hand for silence. We have tried to address this through diplomatic channels. The humans smile and promise nothing. They say their borders are open to all who wish to come. They say they cannot stop people from choosing freedom. He spat the last word like a curse. But we know the truth. They seduce our populations. They undermine our societies. They wage war without firing a shot. Elena watched him carefully. Zekthon was not stupid. Neither were the other delegates. They had identified a real problem, even if they misunderstood its cause. Human worlds were attracting immigrants in massive numbers. 6 species had lost more than 10% of their populations to human colonies in the last decade. The Vryn had lost nearly 20%. We cannot allow this to continue, Zekthon said flatly. Therefore, the Concordat presents humanity with 3 options. Choose wisely, Ambassador Vasquez, for your species' future depends on it. Elena stood. She was tall for a human woman, but short compared to most species here. That had never bothered her. She had learned long ago that presence was not about size. I am listening, High Arbiter, she said calmly. Zekthon's eyes fixed on her. Option 1. Humanity ceases all expansion beyond your current borders. No new colonies. No new systems. You have enough. Option 2, he continued. Humanity submits to Concordat oversight. Every colony, every ship, every diplomatic mission will be monitored. You will not act without our approval. Option 3, and here his voice dropped to a growl. Humanity faces collective military action. We will force compliance if you will not give it freely. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to Elena. This was the moment. This was when humanity would bow to pressure or face the might of 17 species united against them. Elena took a breath. She thought about Earth, green and blue and beautiful. She thought about the colonies, each one a testament to human courage and adaptability. She thought about the Vryn families running restaurants on Mars, the Hecelian engineers working in Luna's shipyards, the Carthene traders who had made fortunes in human space because humans judged them by their work, not their species. I reject all 3 options, she said clearly. Shock rippled through the chamber. Zekthon's scales flared, a sign of extreme agitation. You cannot reject, he began. Instead, Elena continued, her voice cutting through the noise, I extend an invitation. All species of the Concordat are welcome to establish populations on human worlds. Come to our colonies. Come to Earth, see how we live. Judge us not by your fears, but by direct observation. We will open our borders completely. No restrictions. No quotas, no limits. Send observers, send families, send anyone you wish. Let them live among us. Let them work with us. Let them see for themselves whether your accusations are true." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted over each other. Some called her insane. Others demanded clarification. A few, Elena noticed, looked thoughtful. Zekthon roared for silence. It took several minutes to restore order. "This is a trick," he said flatly. "No trick," Elena replied. "You fear what we will do to you in the darkness of space, in systems you cannot monitor. So remove the darkness. Come into our worlds. Live beside us. Document everything you see. If you find evidence of the crimes you accuse us of, present it to this assembly. We will answer for it. And if we find nothing?" asked a Vryn delegate quietly. Elena smiled. "Then perhaps you will have to ask yourselves why your people choose to stay." The debate lasted 3 more hours. Hardliners demanded war immediately. Moderates urged caution. The younger species, those who had joined the Concordat after humanity, mostly stayed silent. They had less to lose from human expansion. In the end, Zekthon's faction won. They would accept humanity's invitation, but not as guests, as investigators, as prosecutors gathering evidence for the trial to come. "We will send observers to every major human world," Zekthon announced. "Millions of them. They will have diplomatic immunity. They will have full access to public spaces, markets, schools, government proceedings. They will document everything. And when we have gathered sufficient evidence of your manipulation, your cultural imperialism, your violation of Concordat principles, we will return. And then, Ambassador Vasquez, there will be war." Elena nodded slowly. "We accept your terms. Send as many observers as you wish. They will be welcomed." The session adjourned. Elena made her way out of the chamber, trailed by her security detail and staff. Her deputy Marcus Chen caught up with her in the corridor. "That was risky," he said quietly. Marcus was a career military officer, seconded to the diplomatic corps. He had the scars to prove his combat experience. "I know," Elena admitted. "They are going to send hundreds of millions of aliens into our space. Some will be spies. Some will be saboteurs. All of them will be looking for reasons to destroy us. I know that too. Then why?" Elena stopped walking and turned to face him. Around them, the corridor buzzed with activity as delegates from various species hurried to their transports. "Marcus, do you remember your history? What happened when the Soviet Union sealed its borders and told its people that the West was evil and decadent? Some people believed it. Others didn't. And what happened when the Berlin Wall came down? When people could see both sides?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "The Soviet system collapsed within 2 years. Exactly. Not because of military action. Not because of sabotage. Because once people could compare, they chose the system that gave them better lives. The Concordat species are terrified of us, Marcus. Not because we are aggressive. Because we are attractive. Their people want what we have. Freedom. Opportunity. A society that judges you by your abilities, not your birth or species. So you're gambling that once they see our worlds up close, they will not want to destroy them? Not just that, Elena said softly. I am gambling that they will want to protect them. Come on, we have a lot of work to do. Earth needs to know what's coming. 6 weeks later, the first wave arrived. 50 million Carthian, proud and suspicious. 30 million Vryn, intellectual and analytical. 80 million Hesselians, practical and skeptical. And representatives from all 14 other species, each bringing their own prejudices and preconceptions. They spread across human space like a flood. Every major colony received thousands, some received millions. They came with recording devices, legal documentation, and absolute certainty that they would find evidence of human crimes. Humanity welcomed them. On Mars, the colonial government set up integration centers. They offered housing assistance, job placement, language courses. The arriving Carthian observers were confused. They had expected hostility, or at least bureaucratic obstacles. Instead, they got efficiency and genuine helpfulness. On Proxima Centauri IV, the city of New Havana prepared for an influx of 2 million observers. The mayor, a woman named Rodriguez, gave a speech to the city. We are about to receive guests from across the galaxy, she said. Some of them think we are villains. Some of them think we have brainwashed their citizens. They are wrong, but we will not convince them with arguments. We will convince them with actions. Treat them with respect. Show them who we are. The truth will speak for itself. The observers arrived and dispersed into the population. They rented apartments. They took jobs. They observed. And what they observed confused them. A Carthene military intelligence officer named Corven was assigned to New Havana. He had expected his cover to be difficult to maintain. Instead, he was assigned a cultural liaison immediately upon arrival. Her name was Maria Santos. She was cheerful, helpful, and completely open. "Welcome to New Havana," Maria said, shaking his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I am here to help you adjust to life on Proxima 4. Do you have housing arranged?" No. I thought I would find something." "No problem. I have a list of available apartments in several neighborhoods. What is your price range? Do you prefer urban or suburban? Close to the spaceport or near the parks?" Corvin stared at her. This was not how infiltration was supposed to work. Over the next week, Maria helped him find an apartment in a mixed neighborhood. She introduced him to his neighbors, 2 human families, a Vryn mathematician and a Hecelian artist. She gave him information about public transportation, local markets, and community events. "There is a neighborhood cookout this weekend," Maria said. "You should come. Good food, good people. It is how we get to know each other here." "I will consider it," Corvin said cautiously. He attended, planning to observe human tribal gatherings for his intelligence reports. What he found was nothing like what he had expected. Humans pressed food into his hands, grilled meat prepared to be compatible with Carthene digestion. They asked about his homeworld. They wanted to know about Carthene music, family structure, religious practices. The questions were not interrogations. They were genuine curiosity. A human child no more than 6 years old stared up at him with wide eyes. "You are really tall," the child said. "Can you reach the top shelf?" Her mother apologized quickly. "Sorry, she is very direct." But Corvin found himself smiling, an expression his species rarely used. "Yes, I can reach high places. It is useful." "Cool," the child said and ran off to play. Corvin watched her go, something strange twisting in his chest. On his homeworld, children were taught to fear other species. Here, this child saw him as just another neighbor. Interesting, but not threatening. He filed his first report that night. It was supposed to document human manipulation tactics. Instead, he found himself writing, "The humans appear to genuinely welcome integration. Methods of manipulation unclear. Will continue observation." Across human space, millions of observers filed similar reports. They described openness, friendliness, and unsettling hospitality. They searched for the trick, the hidden agenda, the manipulation. They could not find it because it did not exist in the way they imagined. On Earth, in the rebuilt United Nations building, Elena Vasquez met with the Human Federation Council. They reviewed the reports from colony governors. "The observers are settling in," the governor of Mars reported. "Some are already applying for work permits. A few have started businesses." "Any incidents?" Elena asked. "Minor, some cultural misunderstandings. Nothing violent. The integration centers are handling it well." Admiral Marcus Chen, now returned to Fleet Command, brought military intelligence. Carthene Command is confused. Their observers are not requesting extraction. In fact, many have stopped filing regular reports. "Are they compromised?" asked a counselor. "No. They are acclimating. They are discovering that life on human worlds is comfortable, prosperous, free. It is exactly what we hoped would happen." Elena looked around the table. "Zekthon and his allies believe they have sent prosecutors to gather evidence against us. They do not realize they have sent settlers. The Concordat wanted observers. We are giving them citizens. And when they realize?" another counselor asked. "Then," Elena said quietly, "they will face a choice. Accept that their systems are inferior to ours, or go to war against populations that include millions of their own people." "Either way, we win," Marcus frowned. "That sounds cold, Ambassador." "It is strategic," Elena corrected. "But it is also idealistic. We believe that free societies are better than authoritarian ones. We believe that diversity makes us stronger. We believe that people, given real choice, will choose freedom. The observers are not prisoners. They are not being manipulated. They are simply being given the opportunity to compare their old lives to potential new ones. If they choose to stay, it is because we offer something better. And if war comes anyway," Elena's expression hardened, "then we fight. But we fight with an army that includes every species in the Concordat, because by the time they realize what has happened, Millions of their people will call human worlds home, and they will defend those homes. 6 months after the observers arrived, Corvin stood on his apartment balcony, looking out over New Havana. The city glowed in the evening light. Below in the streets, humans and aliens moved together without fear or suspicion. A Carthian restaurant had opened down the block, run by a former observer who had decided to stay. Human children were learning Carthian throat singing at the community center. Maria had become a friend. He struggled to explain that in his reports. Friendship was not supposed to happen between intelligence officers and targets, but he could not deny the reality. She cared about his well-being. She asked about his day. She invited him to gatherings not to gather intelligence on him, but because she enjoyed his company. It made no sense by Carthian standards. It made perfect sense by human ones. Corvin's communicator buzzed. A message from Carthian Command. Report status. High Command notes decreased communication frequency. Confirm mission parameters. He stared at the message for a long time. Then he looked back at the city, at the life he was building here. A life where he was not defined by his military rank or his family lineage. A life where he was simply Corvin, neighbor and friend. For the first time since he had arrived, Corvin wondered if he would ever go home. And more disturbingly, he wondered if he wanted to. The trap was set. The Concordat had sent observers. Humanity had turned them into guests. And guests, given time and welcome, became residents. The universe was about to learn what happens when you send millions of your people to see if your enemy is truly evil, only to have them discover that your enemy offers a better life than you do. The war had not started yet, but in a way humanity had already won. 3 months had passed since the observers arrived. The reports flooding back to the Concordat homeworlds painted a picture that confused military analysts and terrified politicians. The observers were not uncovering evidence of human crimes. They were uncovering something far more disturbing. They were enjoying themselves. Corvin had stopped counting how many neighborhood cookouts he had attended. It had become routine. Every weekend someone on his street hosted a gathering. Humans, Vryn, Carthian, Hesselians, all mingling in backyards, sharing food and stories. The humans had a saying, breaking bread together. It meant that eating with someone created bonds. They were right. Maria had invited him to her family dinner the previous week. He met her parents, her brother, her niece. They treated him not as an alien intelligence officer, but as Maria's friend. Her mother had even prepared a dish specifically modified for Carthian digestion. The effort touched him more than he wanted to admit in his reports. Those reports were becoming harder to write. What could he say? The humans are kind. They make us feel welcome. They adapt their entire society to accommodate newcomers. These were supposed to be accusations, but they sounded like praise. He was not alone in his struggle. Across New Havana, thousands of Carthian observers were having similar experiences. In the commercial district, a Carthian merchant named Thelva had opened a traditional Carthian spice shop. Human customers flooded her store, eager to try new flavors. Within a month, she had expanded to 3 locations. Her profits exceeded anything she had made on the homeworld. At the university, Carthian scholars were astounded by human academic culture. They shared data freely. They collaborated across species lines. They gave credit generously. A Carthian physicist named Raldok published a paper on quantum mechanics with 3 human co-authors. On the homeworld, such collaboration would have been impossible. Here it was encouraged. In the colonial defense force, Carthian military observers found themselves training alongside human soldiers. The humans did not treat them as inferiors or potential enemies. They treated them as fellow professionals. They asked for advice on tactics. They incorporated Carthian combat styles into their training. They promoted based on skill, not species. One evening, Corvin sat in a cafe with Maria and 2 other neighbors, a human named James and a Vryn named Clicktet. The cafe was crowded, filled with the buzz of conversation in a dozen languages. Translation devices were everywhere, but people were also learning each other's languages naturally. "I do not understand you people," Corvin said, sipping a drink that tasted like Carthian ale but was made from earth plants. "What do you mean?" Maria asked, smiling. "You make everything look easy. Integration, cooperation, harmony. It is not supposed to be this simple." James laughed. He was an engineer, practical and direct. "It is not simple. It is hard work. But we believe it is worth it." "Why?" Corvin pressed. Your species fought terrible wars among yourselves. Your history is full of hatred and violence. How did you learn to accept differences? Maria's smile faded slightly. We learned because we had to. We nearly destroyed ourselves fighting over differences. Race, religion, nationality, ideology. We built weapons that could end all life on Earth, and we came very close to using them. What stopped you? Fear, James said quietly. And hope. We were terrified of extinction. And we hoped that we could be better, so we made a choice. We decided that cooperation was stronger than conflict. That diversity was better than uniformity. That judging people as individuals was wiser than judging them by their group. Clicktet, who had been silent until now, spoke in the clicking, whistling language of the Vryn. The translator rendered it into words. My people believe in intellectual purity. We think mixing ideas dilutes truth. But I have learned more in 3 months on this world than in 10 years on Vryn Prime. The humans are right. Different perspectives create better understanding. Corvin looked at his companions. 3 species sharing drinks and conversation as naturally as breathing. This was what terrified the Concordat. Not human military might, not human technology. This. The simple, undeniable fact that humans made other species want to join them. His communicator buzzed. Another message from Carthene Command. They were becoming more insistent. Report detailed findings. High Command requires evidence of manipulation tactics. Your recent reports lack specificity. Corvin excused himself and stepped outside. The night air was cool. Above, 3 moons hung in the sky. This was not his homeworld. This was not where he had been born. But increasingly, it felt like home. He composed a response carefully. Subject, detailed observation report. Human manipulation tactics are subtle and pervasive. They employ hospitality as a weapon, creating false sense of security. They use food-sharing rituals to establish artificial bonds. They pretend to value individual merit over species identity. But this may be a method of breaking down proper social structures. Recommend continued observation. Cannot yet determine full extent of their strategy. It was all technically true. It was also deeply misleading. The humans were not pretending to value individuals. They genuinely did. The bonds were not artificial. They were real. But Corvin could not write that. Command would recall him immediately for being compromised. Was he compromised? By intelligence standards, yes. He had formed emotional attachments to targets. He had begun to adopt local customs. He had started thinking of this colony as home rather than assignment, but he did not feel compromised. He felt liberated. Corvin was not unique. Across human space, observers were having similar crises. They had been sent to find evidence of crimes, but they were finding communities that worked better than anything they had known. On Mars, a Hesselian military analyst named Grudnak had been assigned to examine human defensive structures. He expected to find aggressive military expansion. Instead, he found a defense force focused entirely on protection, not conquest. They trained for defensive operations. They built shields, not swords. When he asked why, a human officer said simply, "We fight to protect what we love, not to take what others have." The concept was alien to Grudnak. Hesselian military doctrine was built on the idea that the best defense was overwhelming offense. But watching human forces train, he saw the truth in their philosophy. They were formidable because they had something worth defending. He began training with them. It started as observation but evolved into participation. The humans welcomed his input. They adapted their tactics based on his suggestions. Within 2 months, Grudnak was leading a mixed species unit. Humans, Hesselians, Vryn, Carthene, all working together seamlessly. When Hesselian command ordered him to return and report, Grudnak requested an extension, then another, then another. He could not bring himself to leave. His unit needed him. His friends needed him. The word felt strange in his mind. Friends. Hesselian culture did not emphasize friendship, but here it was everywhere. On Europa, a Vryn scientist named Chelis was analyzing human research methods. She expected to find theft of concordant intellectual property. Instead, she found open collaboration that accelerated discovery at an unprecedented rate. Humans shared data freely. They published findings without demanding sole credit. They welcomed input from any source, regardless of species. Chelis contributed to a project studying bacterial life in Europa's oceans. Her insights were immediately incorporated. She was added as a co-author on 3 papers within a month. On Vrin Prime, she had spent 20 years fighting for recognition in a hierarchical academic system. Here she had recognition within weeks simply by doing good work. When she applied for permanent residency, her family back home cut off contact. They said she had betrayed Vrin intellectual traditions. Shellis grieved the loss, but she did not regret her choice. She had found something on Europa that she had never had on Vrin Prime: respect. The pattern repeated across 100 worlds. Observers sent to document human crimes instead documented human virtues. They were supposed to find manipulation but found genuine welcome. They were supposed to find cultural imperialism but found cultural exchange. And they were supposed to remain objective, but they were becoming invested. Back on the concorded homeworlds, politicians and military leaders reviewed the reports with growing alarm. The observers were not providing the evidence they needed. Worse, the observers were going silent. Of the 200 million observers sent into human space, fewer than 15% were filing regular reports. The rest had either stopped communicating or had filed applications for permanent residency. This was supposed to be an intelligence operation. It was turning into the largest emigration event in galactic history. High Arbiter Zekthon called an emergency session of the Concordate Council. The chamber was tense. Every species faced the same problem. Their observers were defecting in massive numbers. This proves the humans are using some form of mind control, insisted a Vrin delegate. No other explanation is possible. We have found no evidence of mind control, countered a Hecelian. Our scientists have examined returned observers thoroughly. They show no signs of manipulation. Then what? They simply decided to abandon their homeworlds, their families, their duties. Yes, said a quiet voice. It was a representative from the Talsec, a younger species that had joined the Concordate only recently. They chose to stay because life on human worlds is better than life on our worlds. That is the truth none of you want to acknowledge. The chamber erupted in angry denials, but the Talsec representative continued, speaking over the noise. I have read the reports. All of them. The observers describe societies with greater personal freedom, greater economic opportunity, greater social mobility. They describe being judged by their abilities, not their birth status. They describe communities that welcome newcomers rather than isolating them. Why would they want to return to systems that offer less? Zekthon slammed one massive fist on the podium. Because loyalty matters. Because tradition matters. Because we cannot allow one upstart species to undermine thousands of years of civilization. Perhaps, the Talsec said softly, our civilizations needed undermining. The session dissolved into chaos. Delegates screamed at each other. Ancient alliances fractured. Some species called for immediate military action. Others urged patience. A few very quietly began discussing reform. Zekthon left the chamber in a rage. He returned to his private office and accessed the communication network. He opened a secure channel to Corvin, one of his most trusted intelligence officers. Corvin, respond immediately. This is High Arbiter Zekthon. I am issuing a direct order. You will cease your current assignment and return to the homeworld. You will provide testimony before the High Council regarding human manipulation tactics. Failure to comply will be considered treason. The message sent. Zekthon waited. Hours passed. No response came. Finally, a reply arrived. Zekthon opened it with shaking hands. High Arbiter Zekthon, I have received your order. After careful consideration, I must respectfully decline. I am resigning my commission in Carthene Military Intelligence effective immediately. I am applying for citizenship in the Human Federation. I will not provide testimony that misrepresents what I have observed. The humans are not manipulating us. They are simply offering us a better way to live. I am sorry, but I cannot return to a society that offers less freedom, less opportunity, and less respect for individual worth. This was not an easy decision, but it is the right one. I wish you and the Dominion well. Respectfully, former intelligence officer Corvin. Zekthon stared at the message in disbelief. Corvin had been one of his best officers. Loyal, capable, dedicated, and now defected. If the humans could turn someone like Corvin, they could turn anyone. Zekthon made a decision. He would go to human space himself. He would see these worlds with his own eyes. He would find the truth behind their manipulation. And then he would lead the war that would destroy them before they destroyed the Concordate. On New Havana, Corvin read his own message again after sending it. His hand shook slightly. He had just committed treason against his own species. He had betrayed oaths he had sworn decades ago. He had cut ties with his homeworld, possibly forever. But he felt no regret. Only relief. Maria found him on his balcony an hour later. She took one look at his face and knew something significant had happened. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I just resigned my military commission. I'm applying for citizenship here." Maria's eyes widened. Then she smiled and hugged him. It was a human gesture of comfort and celebration. Corvin had learned to appreciate it. "Welcome home," she said. Those 2 words meant more than she could possibly know. Home. Not an assignment. Not a mission. Home. Below them, the city continued its evening routine. Humans and aliens moved through the streets, living lives that were ordinary in their shared normalcy. No one stared. No one feared. They simply coexisted, each contributing to a society that valued all of them. This was what the Concordat feared. Not conquest. Not war. This. The simple, powerful reality that diversity made communities stronger, that freedom made people happier, that judging individuals by their character rather than their species created better societies. Corvin had been sent as a spy. He had become a citizen. And he was not alone. Millions of observers across human space were making the same choice. The Concordat had sent an invasion force. Humanity had turned them into immigrants, and immigrants, given time and welcome, became the strongest defenders of their new homes. The universe was about to learn a lesson. You cannot defeat an idea by observing it. You can only prove it right. 6 months into the observation period, the Concordat faced a crisis unlike any in its history. The numbers were undeniable and terrifying. Of the 200 million observers sent to human space, only 30 million were still filing regular reports. 50 million had formally applied for permanent residency in human territories. The remaining 120 million were simply living their lives on human worlds, neither reporting nor requesting extraction. High Arbiter Zekthon stood before a galaxy map in his private chambers. Red dots marked human colonies. Blue dots marked Concordat worlds. For thousands of years, the blue had dominated. Now red was spreading like blood in water. But the true threat was not the red dots themselves. It was what they represented. Each human colony now hosted populations from multiple Concordat species. They were no longer purely human worlds. They were something new, something the Concordat had no name for. Zekthon made a decision. He would visit human space personally. He would bring a team of investigators. He would find the secret behind human manipulation, and he would use that knowledge to finally justify the war his people demanded. The human response to his visit request came within hours. Ambassador Elena Vasquez herself extended the invitation. No restrictions. No limitations. He could visit any colony, interview any resident, examine any facility. They would provide transportation, translation, and complete access. It was, Zekthon thought grimly, exactly what he would have done if he were hiding nothing. Which made it either genuine openness or exceptionally sophisticated deception. 3 weeks later, Zekthon's ship arrived at New Havana. The colonial government greeted him with full ceremony, but without military presence. The mayor, a human woman named Rodriguez, welcomed him personally. High Arbiter Zekthon, welcome to New Havana. We are honored by your visit. I hope you will find your stay enlightening. I intend to find it revealing, Zekthon replied coldly. Rodriguez smiled as if he had said something pleasant. Of course. I have arranged accommodations for you and your team. You have full diplomatic immunity and unrestricted access to all public spaces. If you need access to non-public areas, simply request it through my office. We will accommodate you whenever possible. Over the next week, Zekthon conducted his investigation with military precision. He interviewed defectors. He examined economic records. He attended public meetings. He observed schools. He visited markets, factories, residential areas, and government buildings. What he found disturbed him deeply. The defectors were not being held against their will. They were living freely, working jobs they had chosen, raising families in communities they had selected. When he questioned them, they answered honestly without fear or hesitation. A Carthene merchant told him, "I make more profit here in 1 month than I made in a year on the homeworld. The humans judge my products by their quality, not by my species." Competition is fair. Regulations are clear. I have expanded my business 3 times. A Vrin scientist said, I have published more research here in 6 months than in 20 years on Vrin Prime. The humans share data freely. They collaborate without demanding ownership. Merit determines recognition, not political connections. Why would I return to a system that limited my work? A Hesselian soldier stated, I lead a unit of mixed species. Humans, Carthene, Vrin, even 2 other Hesselians. We train together. We respect each other's strengths. They promoted me because I was good at my job, not because of my family lineage. The human military values competence over pedigree. The testimonies followed the same pattern. Better economic opportunity, greater personal freedom, merit-based advancement, societies that welcomed difference rather than fearing it. Zekthon interviewed a human psychologist trying to understand the mechanism. How do you do it? How do you make them want to stay? The psychologist, a woman named Dr. Chen, looked confused by the question. We do not make them do anything. We simply offer them the same opportunities we offer our own citizens. Freedom to choose their occupation, their residence, their beliefs. Protection under law regardless of species. A society that judges individuals by their actions, not their biology. Most beings given the choice prefer freedom over control. But you must do something. Use some technique. The numbers are too large to be natural. Dr. Chen shook her head. High Arbiter, I think you are looking for a conspiracy where there is only a simple truth. People move toward opportunity and away from restriction. Human worlds offer more opportunity and less restriction than concordant worlds. That is not manipulation. That is just reality. Zekthon wanted to argue, but the evidence surrounded him. He walked through streets where humans and aliens mixed without tension. He watched children of different species play together without supervision or conflict. He saw businesses run by aliens thriving alongside human enterprises. He observed community councils where representatives of 5 species debated policy without violence or domination. It was everything the Concordat claimed to be but never achieved. Unity through cooperation rather than through enforced conformity. On his 5th day in New Havana, Zekthon encountered someone unexpected. Corvin, his former intelligence officer, stood in a marketplace shopping for food. He wore civilian clothing and carried a bag filled with vegetables and Carthene spices. Zekvin approached. Corvin saw him and tensed but did not flee. Traitor, Zekvin said quietly. Former officer following his conscience. Corvin replied calmly. High Arbiter, what are you doing here? Investigating. Seeking proof of human crimes. Have you found any? Zekthon was silent. You will not find what you are looking for, Corvin said, because it does not exist. The humans are not manipulating us. They are simply offering us better lives. That is not a crime. It is a gift that destroys our societies. Do you know how many Carthene have defected now? Over 40 million. Nearly 10% of our population. Our economy is collapsing. Our military is understaffed. Our culture is dying. Our culture was already dying, Corvin said fiercely. It died the moment it became more important to maintain hierarchy than to promote excellence. It died when we decided that tradition mattered more than progress. It died when we taught our young to fear difference rather than embrace it. The humans did not kill our culture. They simply offered an alternative. And millions of us chose it. A human woman approached. Maria. She carried her own shopping bag. She smiled at Corvin, then noticed Zekthon and her smile became more cautious. Everything okay? She asked Corvin. Yes, Maria, this is High Arbiter Zekthon, my former commander. High Arbiter, this is Maria Santos, my friend. Maria extended her hand in the human greeting. Welcome to New Havana, High Arbiter. I hope you are enjoying your visit. Zekthon looked at her hand but did not take it. Maria withdrew it without offense. I am investigating crimes against the Concordat, Zekthon said. Then you have a difficult task ahead, Maria replied pleasantly, because there are no crimes here. Only people living their lives. Would you like to join us for dinner? Corvin and I are cooking tonight. You could see how we live. It might inform your investigation. The invitation was absurd. He was High Arbiter of the Carthene Dominion. He did not have dinner with traitors and the humans who corrupted them, but he was also an intelligence officer at heart. And this was an opportunity to observe the enemy in their natural environment. I accept, he said. That evening, Zekthon sat in Maria's apartment, modest but comfortable, and ate food prepared by a human and a Carthene working together in a kitchen. 2 other neighbors joined them. James, a human engineer, and Clicktet, a Vryn mathematician. The conversation ranged across topics: work, local politics, a new restaurant opening downtown, a school play featuring children from 6 species. It was mundane, ordinary, and that was what made it extraordinary. These were not conspirators. They were not manipulators or victims. They were simply neighbors sharing a meal. The natural ease of it was undeniable. No one performed for his benefit. They simply lived. "Hi, Arbiter," James asked during dessert. "What will you tell your government when you return?" "The truth," Zekthon said, "which is that the humans have created something unprecedented. A society that functions across species lines without domination or subjugation, and that this represents an existential threat to every traditional government in the Concordat." The table fell silent. "Is that really how you see it?" Maria asked quietly. "As a threat? How else should I see it? Millions of our citizens have abandoned their homeworlds. Our economies suffer. Our militaries weaken. Your success is built on our decline." "No," Corvin said firmly. "Your decline is built on your own failures." The humans did not force anyone to leave. They simply offered an alternative. If Carthene society valued individual achievement over inherited status, fewer would leave. If Vryn Prime encouraged collaboration over competition, their scientists would stay. If Hesselian culture promoted merit over lineage, their soldiers would remain. You blame the humans for offering something better. You should blame yourselves for offering something worse. Zekthon felt anger rise in his chest. "You dare?" "Yes, I dare. Because I have lived in both systems, and I choose this one. Not because I was manipulated. Not because I was brainwashed. Because it is objectively better for people like me who want to be judged by what they do, not by who they were born as." Clicktet spoke, their translation device rendering the clicking speech into words. "Hi, Arbiter, I came to human space as an observer. I was supposed to find evidence of wrongdoing. Instead, I found a society where my ideas matter more than my family connections, where my research is judged by its quality, not by the prestige of my institution. I have accomplished more here in 8 months than in my entire previous career. This is not manipulation. This is meritocracy, and it works." Zekthon looked around the table. 4 species sharing food and conversation as equals. No hierarchy, no dominance, just individuals relating to each other as people rather than as representatives of their species. It was everything he had been taught to fear. And it worked beautifully. He left the dinner without saying goodbye. He returned to his ship and spent the night reviewing his findings. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The humans were not using mind control or manipulation. They were simply living according to principles that produced better outcomes than concordant principles. The question was what to do with that information. He could report honestly and admit that human society was superior to Carthene society. That would mean accepting the need for massive reforms. It would mean admitting that thousands of years of Carthene culture were flawed at a fundamental level. It would mean revolution, or he could lie. He could claim evidence of manipulation, even if none existed. He could justify war. He could attempt to destroy the alternative before it destroyed the traditional order. Both options were terrible. Both would lead to suffering. Zekthon stared at star charts until dawn. On his final day in New Havana, he requested a private meeting with Corvin. They met in a park, walking among gardens tended by volunteers from a dozen species. "If I returned to the homeworld and told the truth," Zekthon asked, "what would happen?" "Some would believe you. Most would not. They do not want to believe their system is inferior. Admitting that requires admitting they have wasted their lives maintaining something broken. And if I lie? If I claim the humans are manipulating us, then you get your war. And you will lose. Because millions of Concordat citizens now live on human worlds. They will fight to defend their homes. You will be asking Carthene soldiers to kill Carthene civilians, Vryn to kill Vryn, Hesselian to kill Hesselian. Even if you win militarily, you lose politically. There is no good option. There is one option, Corvin said quietly. Tell the truth. Advocate for reform. Give your people the chance to choose a better system voluntarily, rather than having it forced on them by defeat. They will call me a traitor. They may execute me, they might, but you will die having done the right thing. Is that not what honor demands? Zekthon laughed bitterly. You lecture me on honor? You who betrayed your oaths? I kept my oaths. I swore to serve my people. I am serving them by trying to prevent a war that will destroy them. My methods changed. My loyalty did not. Zekthon had no answer to that. He returned to the Concordat 3 days later. An emergency session was called. The chamber was packed. Every delegate wanted to hear his findings. High Arbiter Zekthon stood at the center of the chamber and faced his people. The moment of decision had come. He could lie and get his war, or he could tell the truth and try to save his civilization. He thought of Corvin and Maria sharing a kitchen, of Clicted pursuing research freely, of children playing without knowing their species were supposed to hate each other, of communities that actually worked. He took a breath and began to speak. High Arbiter Zekthon stood before the Concordat assembly and told the truth. He described what he had seen in human space, the prosperity, the freedom, the genuine welcome. He admitted that he found no evidence of manipulation or mind control. He stated clearly that human society functioned better than Carthene society in measurable ways. The chamber erupted in fury. "Traitor!" screamed a delegate. "The humans have corrupted you!" "He has been compromised," shouted another. "His testimony is worthless." Zekthon raised his 4 hands for silence. "I know you do not want to hear this. I did not want to believe it myself. But denying reality does not change it. Our people are leaving because we offer them less than the humans do. We can respond to this threat in 3 ways. We can reform our society to compete with human standards. We can accept our decline gracefully. Or we can go to war and force our people to remain in a system they have rejected. Then war it is, declared war leader Krakthos of the Carthene military. We cannot allow one species to destroy thousands of years of civilization. The vote was swift and decisive. 7 species, led by the Carthene Dominion, voted for military action. 4 species abstained. 6 species voted against, but they were outvoted. The Concordat was going to war. Zekthon had failed. He had told the truth, and it changed nothing. The hardliners had already made their decision. They would rather fight than reform. Within days, military mobilization began. Fleets assembled, armies prepared. Intelligence estimated that the combined Concordat forces numbered over 15,000 warships and 3 million soldiers. Humanity had perhaps 4,000 ships and 800,000 soldiers, spread across 53 systems. The numbers favored the Concordat significantly, but the Concordat planners had made one critical miscalculation. They assumed the Itizimia aliens living on human worlds would remain neutral or evacuate before fighting began. They were wrong. On New Havana, Corvin attended an emergency town hall meeting. The colonial governor stood before 3,000 residents, humans and aliens mixed throughout the crowd. "By now, you have all heard the news," Governor Rodriguez said. "The Concordat has voted for military action. They intend to attack human colonies within the next 30 days. Every resident has the right to evacuate. We will provide transportation for anyone who wishes to leave. No questions asked, no penalties imposed." She paused, looking across the crowd. "But I must also tell you that if you choose to stay, we will be organizing defense forces. Every able resident, regardless of species, will be asked to contribute. Some will fight, others will support logistics, medical care, emergency services. We do not want war. But if war comes, we will defend our homes." A Carthene voice called out from the crowd. It was Thelva, the merchant who had expanded her spice business to 3 locations. "Governor, you said our homes. Did you mean human homes or all our homes?" Rodriguez smiled. "I meant what I said. This colony is home to 8 million people. 2 million of them are not human. But they are all residents. They all contribute. They all belong. So yes, I mean all our homes." "Then I will fight," Thelva said. "I will not allow anyone to destroy what I have built here." Another voice, Vryn this time. "I came as an observer. I stayed as a citizen. If the Concordat attacks, they attack my home. I will defend it." A Hesselian stood, massive and powerful. "I serve in the Colonial Defense Force already. My oath was to protect this colony and all its people. That oath does not change because my birth species has gone mad. One by one, voices rose. Carthene, Vryn, Heselian, and others. Not all chose to fight. Some chose evacuation. But thousands chose to stay and defend. Corvin stood and caught the governor's eye. I will fight. And I will command if you need me. I know Carthene military tactics better than any human. Use my knowledge. Rodriguez nodded. Report to Colonial Defense Headquarters tomorrow. We are going to need every advantage we can get. Across human space, the scene repeated. Millions of aliens faced a choice. Most chose to stay. Some because they had built lives they refused to abandon. Others because they believed in the principles human society represented. Still others because they were angry at being forced to choose between their birth species and their chosen homes. The Concordat had not anticipated this. They had assumed loyalty to species would override loyalty to place. They were learning that loyalty is not inherited. It is earned. 3 weeks later, the Carthene Dominion fleet arrived at New Havana. 63 warships against New Havana's 12 defenders. War leader Krakthos commanded the fleet personally. He had expected this to be simple. Destroy the colonial defense forces, occupy the colony, extract Carthene citizens, and establish Concordat control. His communication officer received a signal from the defense fleet. War leader, we have an incoming transmission from the human forces. Ignore it. They will only beg for mercy. Sir, the transmission is in Carthene. It uses military protocols. Krakthos frowned. Put it through. The voice that filled his command center was familiar and shocking. War leader Krakthos, this is Commander Corvin, Colonial Defense Force of New Havana. I hereby warn you that you are approaching a populated colony containing 42,000 Carthene citizens. If you attack, you will be firing on your own people. Krakthos felt rage and disbelief mix in his chest. Corvin, the intelligence officer? Former intelligence officer, current defender of my home. War leader, I know you. I served under you for 7 years. You are a soldier of honor. Think carefully about what you are about to do. There are children on this colony, Carthene children, families, civilians. They have built lives here. Will you destroy them to make a political point? They are traitors who abandoned their oaths. They are citizens who chose a better life. That is not treason. That is freedom. War leader, I am begging you. Do not do this. Call for negotiations. Find a peaceful solution. Do not start a war that will kill thousands of your own people. Krakthos terminated the connection. All ships prepare to attack. We will destroy the defense fleet first, then establish orbital control. His tactical officer hesitated. War leader, 3 of our captains are requesting clarification. They have family members on the colony surface. They are uncomfortable with the attack orders. Discomfort is irrelevant. All ships will follow orders or face court-martial. The fleet advanced. New Havana's defenders moved to intercept. The battle was brief and brutal. Human ships used unconventional tactics learned partially from Corvin's knowledge of Carthene doctrine. They knew how the Carthene fleet would move because Corvin had trained them in those patterns. The defenders lost 4 ships. The Carthene lost 7. But the real damage was not military. During the battle, 3 Carthene ships refused direct orders to fire on the colony. Their captains stated clearly that they would not attack a settlement housing their own families. The 3 ships broke formation and withdrew to neutral space. Krakthos was forced to retreat and regroup. He had lost ships, but worse, he had lost cohesion. His fleet was fracturing. That night, transmissions flooded Carthene homeworld networks. Footage from the battle. Helmet camera views from human soldiers fighting alongside Carthene defenders. Interviews with Carthene civilians on New Havana, crying as they described hiding in shelters while their birth species attacked their chosen home. The Carthene public was shocked. Many had supported the war effort abstractly. Seeing Carthene fighting against Carthene made it real and terrible. Protests erupted in major Carthene cities. Families of the 42,000 Carthene on New Havana demanded ceasefire. Military families whose relatives served on the 3 ships that refused orders spoke out in support of their loved ones' decisions. The Dominion government tried to suppress the information. They failed. Human communication networks were too distributed, too resilient. The truth spread faster than censorship could contain it. Meanwhile, the pattern repeated at other human colonies. Vryn fleets attacked colonies housing Vryn civilians. Hecelian forces faced Hecelian defenders. Species after species confronted the reality that they were being asked to wage war on their own people. Some followed orders, others refused. Military cohesion crumbled across concordant forces. 4 days after the Battle of New Havana, the Vryn Collective announced it was withdrawing from the war effort. Their leadership stated clearly, "We cannot ask our soldiers to kill Vryn civilians. This conflict has no military solution." The Hecelian clans followed 2 days later with a similar announcement. Within a week, the Grand Alliance against humanity had collapsed to just 3 species still committed to military action. And even among those 3, dissent was spreading. High Arbiter Zekthon watched the disintegration from his chambers. He had been stripped of most of his authority for his compromised testimony. But he still had access to intelligence networks. He knew what was happening. The war was failing not because humanity was militarily superior. It was failing because you cannot conquer someone who has already won the hearts of your own people. He composed a message to Ambassador Elena Vasquez. "I request permission to travel to Earth for direct negotiations. The war cannot continue. But my government will not admit defeat unless given a path forward that preserves some dignity. Will you negotiate?" The reply came within hours. "Yes, come immediately. We do not want this war any more than you do. Let us find peace together." Zekthon traveled to Earth in a small diplomatic shuttle, not a warship. He was met not by armed guards but by diplomatic staff. Ambassador Vasquez greeted him personally. "High Arbiter, welcome to Earth. I'm sorry it took war to bring you here." "As am I," Zekthon replied wearily. They met in a conference room overlooking Lake Geneva. Coffee was served, adapted for Carthene biochemistry as always. The small courtesy reminded Zekthon of why humanity kept winning. They thought of details that made others comfortable. "You have won," Zekthon said without preamble. "You have defeated us without needing to destroy us. Half our population now lives in your space or wants to. Our military forces refuse to fight because you have made homes for their families. Your victory is complete. What terms do you demand?" Vasquez set down her coffee cup. "High Arbiter, we demand nothing. We never wanted conquest. We wanted to prove that free societies work better than rigid ones. We have proven that. What happens next is up to you. Do not toy with me. You have leverage. Use it. I am not toying with you. I am being honest. We do not want subject species. We do not want an empire. We want a galaxy where different peoples can cooperate based on mutual respect and shared values. If the Carthene Dominion wants to reform and join that project, we welcome you. If you want to remain isolated and traditional, we will not force you to change. But we will not pretend that your system is equal to ours when it clearly is not." Zekthon studied her face for deception. He found only sincerity. "If I returned home and proposed the reforms necessary to compete with your society, I would likely be executed for treason." "Probably," Vasquez agreed. "But you would die having tried to save your civilization. Isn't that better than dying in a war you know is wrong? You ask me to sacrifice myself for a cause that may fail. I ask you to lead. That is what leaders do. They take risks for their people's benefit." Zekthon was silent for a long moment. "If I do this, if I return and advocate for reform, will you help? Will you provide advisors, resources, support?" "Yes, anything you need, but the reforms must be genuinely chosen by your people. We will not impose change. It must come from within. And if my people execute me and choose war instead?" Vasquez's expression hardened. "Then we will defeat you decisively. But we will do so with sorrow, not satisfaction. We would rather have you as partners than as defeated enemies." Zekthon stood and walked to the window. Earth spread below, blue and green and beautiful. Billions of humans lived down there, along with millions of aliens who had chosen to make Earth their home. It worked. He had seen it work on New Havana. He had seen it work here. He could no longer deny it. "I will try," he said quietly. "I will return and tell my people the truth, that we can either reform and thrive or remain unchanged and decline. They may kill me for saying it, but you are right. That is what leadership demands." He turned back to Vasquez. "I have one request." "Name it." "Corvin. The officer who defected. I want to speak with him before I leave." Not as his commander. As someone seeking wisdom, Vasquez smiled. I will arrange it. 2 days later, Zekthon and Corvin met in a garden on Earth. It was neutral ground, peaceful and green. They walked among flowering plants tended by volunteers from 8 species. You were right, Zekthon said. About everything. The humans are not our enemies. We are our own enemies. We built systems that prioritize order over excellence, tradition over progress, conformity over freedom, and those systems were killing us slowly. The humans simply offered an alternative. I was a fool to call that manipulation. You were not a fool, Corvin said. You were loyal to what you had been taught. But loyalty to wrong ideas is not virtue. It is just stubbornness. I am going to try to reform the Dominion.
I will probably fail and die.
Do you have any advice for a doomed mission? Corvin smiled. Tell them what you saw. Not theories or abstractions, stories. Tell them about Maria teaching me to cook. About Clicktet publishing groundbreaking research. About children playing together without knowing they were supposed to hate each other. Tell them about communities that work because they are built on respect, not fear. People respond to stories more than to arguments. And if they do not listen, then at least you tried. That matters, High Arbiter. It matters more than you know. They parted with a Carthian gesture of respect. Zekthon boarded his shuttle and returned to the home world. 3 weeks later, he stood before the High Council and spoke for 6 hours. He told stories. He showed footage. He presented evidence. He argued passionately for reform. The council voted. The result was narrow but clear. They would not execute him. They would not reform immediately, but they would declare ceasefire and begin discussions about gradual change. It was not victory. But it was not defeat either. It was a beginning, and sometimes that is enough. 2 years had changed the galaxy beyond recognition. The Concordat existed only as a historical artifact. In its place stood the Federated Systems, a loose alliance built on voluntary cooperation rather than enforced hierarchy. 12 species had joined fully. 5 more were in the process of membership negotiations. 3 remained isolated, refusing contact, watching nervously as their neighbors transformed. The Carthian Dominion was now the Carthian Republic. High Arbiter Zekthon, somehow still alive despite 2 assassination attempts, served as First Minister. His approval rating fluctuated between 40 and 60%, depending on which reforms were being implemented. He had aged visibly in 2 years. Leading a civilization through transformation was harder than leading it through war. Elena Vasquez had become Secretary General of the Federated Systems. She worked from a new headquarters on Threshold Station, the same place where humanity had once been threatened with war. The symbolism was deliberate. Where once threats were issued, now cooperation was planned. On New Havana, life had returned to comfortable normalcy. The colony had expanded to 10 million residents. 3 million of them were non-human. Carthian, Vryn, Hecelian, and 8 other species lived side by side, building lives that crossed every artificial boundary their ancestors had created. Corvin stood on his balcony, now shared with Maria. They had formalized their partnership 6 months ago in a ceremony that incorporated both human and Carthian traditions. Half their neighbors attended. The other half brought gifts later, apologizing for scheduling conflicts. It was ordinary life, the kind that would have been impossible 3 years ago. He was Deputy Director of Colonial Defense now. His office employed 47 people from 6 species. They worked together so naturally that species rarely entered his mind anymore. He judged his staff by competence, creativity, and dedication. Their biology was irrelevant. Maria had been promoted to Director of Cultural Integration for the entire Proxima system. 4 colonies now fell under her responsibility. She spent half her time traveling, helping newly arrived immigrants adjust to life in a pluralistic society. She loved the work, though it exhausted her. Are you coming to the dinner party tonight? Maria asked, stepping onto the balcony beside him. Do I have a choice? Corvin replied, smiling. Not really. James is cooking, and you know how he gets if people cancel. The dinner party was an old tradition now. Every month, their neighborhood group gathered at someone's home. 12 regulars attended. 4 humans, 3 Carthian, 2 Vryn, 2 Hecelians, and 1 Talsec. They ate, talked, played games, and complained about local politics. It was mundane in the best possible way. That evening, gathered around James's dining table, The conversation turned to galactic news. The Sovereignty, a xenophobic empire from beyond explored space, had sent their first diplomatic mission to the Federated Systems. The mission had been tense. "They think we are insane," Ted said, clicking with what sounded like amusement. "They cannot comprehend a society where multiple species cooperate as equals." Their translator kept asking if we were a client species or a slave class. "What did you tell them?" asked Thelva, the Carthian merchant. "That I was a citizen with full rights and responsibilities." They did not believe me. They kept asking to speak to my human masters. Everyone at the table laughed, though the laughter had an edge. The Sovereignty represented the old way of thinking. Hierarchical, rigid, species-centric. They saw the Federated Systems as unnatural and threatening. "Do you think they will attack?" Maria asked. James shook his head. "They will threaten, but they will not attack immediately. They are doing what the Concordat did. They are sending observers to see if our society is real or a deception. We know how that ends. Unless they learn from history," Corvin cautioned. The Concordat sent observers who were allowed to integrate freely. The Sovereignty might keep their observers isolated, prevent them from experiencing our culture directly. "Then they will learn nothing," Maria said. "You cannot understand cooperation by remaining separate. They have to experience it to believe it." The conversation moved on to lighter topics. Sports, a new restaurant, a scandal involving a city councilor and misused funds, the ordinary concerns of people living ordinary lives in an extraordinary time. Later, as Corvin and Maria walked home through streets lit by 3 moons, she asked him a question that had been on her mind. "Do you ever regret it? Leaving the Dominion? Your career? Your family?" Corvin considered carefully. "I regret the pain it caused my family. My parents stopped speaking to me. My siblings think I betrayed them. That hurts. But do I regret the choice itself? No, I am happier here than I ever was there. I am more myself. I am valued for what I contribute, not for my lineage. I have you, I have friends, I have work that matters. I miss what I lost, but I do not regret gaining what I have." Maria squeezed his hand. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. Millions of former Concordat citizens had made the same choice Corvin had. They lived with the consequences. Estranged families, lost connections, cultural dislocation. But most would make the same choice again. Meanwhile, on the Carthian homeworld, Zekthon faced his own consequences. Reform was slow and painful. Every change faced opposition. Conservatives called him a traitor. Progressives called him too cautious. Extremists had tried to kill him twice. He survived only because his personal guard included both Carthian and human security officers, and the humans had excellent threat detection training. The reforms themselves were comprehensive but gradual. The hereditary class system was being dismantled over 10 years. The military was transitioning to merit-based promotion. The economy was being opened to competition. Education was being reformed to encourage critical thinking rather than rote memorization. Each change created winners and losers. The winners embraced the new system. The losers plotted resistance. Zekthon met with Elena Vasquez quarterly to discuss progress and request assistance. She provided technical advisors, economic experts, and diplomatic support. But she was careful never to dictate terms. The reforms had to be genuinely Carthian choices or they would not survive. "How long until the Carthian Republic is stable?" Vasquez asked during one such meeting. "A generation," Zekthon replied wearily. "Perhaps 2. Real cultural change takes time. We are rewiring assumptions that have existed for thousands of years. Some of my people understand the necessity. Others fight every step. I will not live to see the completion of this work. But perhaps my successor will." "Do you have a successor in mind?" "Several. All younger than me. All educated in both Carthian and human institutions. All committed to reform. Whether they survive the political combat necessary to take power is another question." Vasquez smiled. "Democracy is messy, but it is better than the alternatives." "So I am learning," Zekthon agreed. "Slowly, painfully, but learning nonetheless." Not every species followed the Carthian path. 3 species had sealed their borders completely after the war. They expelled all humans and contaminated citizens. They banned outside media. They returned to isolationism. The Federated Systems respected their choice. No pressure was applied, no sanctions imposed. But the isolation was not complete. Information leaked through. Citizens who had relatives in the federated systems heard stories. Traders brought goods and tales. The isolated species were building walls, but walls are permeable. Within those 3 species, underground movements had begun. Small groups advocating for reform, secret networks sharing forbidden information about life in the federated systems. They were growing slowly, but they were growing. History suggested that isolation could not last. Eventually, people would demand the freedoms their neighbors enjoyed. The question was whether change would come through peaceful reform or violent revolution. Humanity hoped for the former but prepared for the latter. A year and a half after the failed war, a documentary filmmaker produced a comprehensive history of the transformation. It was called The Invitation. The film included interviews with key figures: Elena Vasquez, Zekthon, Corvin, and dozens of ordinary citizens from multiple species. The most powerful moment came near the end. The filmmaker asked Vasquez a direct question. When you extended the invitation to the Concordat, did you know this would happen? Was it a calculated strategy? Vasquez laughed, and the sound was genuine. We hoped. We did not know. You have to understand. Humanity learned something painful during our own history. We fought 2 world wars. We built weapons that could destroy all life on Earth. We came very close to using them, and we learned slowly and painfully that diversity makes societies stronger, not weaker. That cooperation is more powerful than competition. That judging people as individuals rather than as members of groups creates better outcomes. So when we went to the stars and met other species, we applied those lessons. Not because we were trying to be clever, because that is who we had become. We invited the Concordat observers not as a trick, but as a demonstration. We wanted to show them that pluralistic societies work. We believed that exposure to that reality would matter more than any argument we could make. But you must have known they might choose to stay. We hoped they would. But we could not force it. Freedom requires genuine choice. If they stayed because they wanted to, that validated our approach. If they returned home satisfied with their own systems, we would have accepted that too. The invitation was sincere, not manipulative. But it was strategic. Vasquez paused, choosing her words carefully. It was strategic in the sense that we knew transparency was our best defense. We had nothing to hide because we had nothing to be ashamed of. But it was not manipulative. We did not trick anyone. We simply showed them who we are and let them decide if they wanted to be part of it. The filmmaker pressed further. Some critics say humanity's approach is a form of cultural imperialism, that you are destroying ancient civilizations and replacing them with human values. I understand that criticism, Vasquez replied, but I disagree with it fundamentally. We are not imposing human values. We are demonstrating universal principles: freedom, cooperation, merit, respect for individuals. These are not uniquely human concepts. They are aspirations that resonate across species lines, because they produce better outcomes for everyone. If Carthene culture or Vryn culture or Hessalian culture wants to maintain traditions that conflict with these principles, they are free to do so. But they cannot complain when their citizens choose systems that offer them better lives. So you are saying the Concordat species are inferior? No, I am saying their governmental systems were inferior to ours. The species themselves are equal, given equal opportunities. Carthene excel at logistics, Vryn at theoretical science, Hessalians at engineering, humans at adaptation. Every species brings unique strengths. The question is whether societies allow those strengths to flourish. Authoritarian systems suppress potential. Free systems unleash it. That is not cultural imperialism. That is just reality. The documentary ended with footage of a primary school on Threshold Station. Children from 9 species learned together in a single classroom. They studied mathematics, literature, science, and history. They played together during breaks. They formed friendships that crossed every traditional boundary. A teacher, herself a Vryn, was asked what she taught about the war and the transformation. I teach them what happened. That species can cooperate or compete. That fear drives conflict and curiosity drives connection. That their parents and grandparents almost destroyed each other over differences that did not matter. And that they have the opportunity to build something better. Do they understand? They understand better than we did at their age, because they live it every day. To them, having friends from other species is normal. They do not fear difference. They celebrate it. The documentary became required viewing in schools across the federated systems. It was translated into 47 languages. Copies were smuggled into the isolated species despite their government's attempts at suppression. 3 months after its release, protests erupted in the capital city of one of the isolated species. Citizens demanded the right to travel to Federated Systems worlds. The government cracked down violently. The protests spread. Within 6 months, that species' government fell. A new government led by reformers immediately opened negotiations to join the Federated Systems. The transformation was not complete, but it had begun. On Earth, Elena Vasquez watched the news with mixed emotions. She was glad the species was reforming, but she mourned the violence that had been necessary. Reform was always better than revolution, but sometimes revolution was the only path available. Her assistant brought her a new intelligence report. The Sovereignty had sent another diplomatic mission. This one included a request. They wanted to send observers to human worlds. They wanted to see if the Federated Systems was real or propaganda. Vasquez smiled. She had read this script before. She drafted a response personally. It was short, simple, and very human. You are welcome to visit our worlds. We would love to show you what is possible when different peoples work together. Send as many observers as you wish. They will be welcomed as guests and given full access to see how we live. We have nothing to hide and everything to share. She sent the message and leaned back in her chair. The Sovereignty probably expected this to be an intelligence operation. They would send thousands of observers to document human weaknesses and prepare for eventual war. What they would find instead was communities that worked. Societies that valued individuals over hierarchies, economies that rewarded merit over birth, cultures that celebrated diversity rather than fearing it. And their observers, like the concorded observers before them, would face a choice. Return to rigid hierarchical societies that offered less opportunity and less freedom? Or stay in places that judged them by their abilities and gave them room to thrive? History suggested how most would choose. The Sovereignty thought they were sending spies. Humanity would turn them into immigrants, and immigrants, given time and welcome, would become citizens, and citizens would defend their new homes. The cycle would repeat. The invitation would work again, not because humanity was manipulating anyone, because humanity was offering something genuine, a society where difference was strength, where freedom was protected, where individuals mattered more than categories. The universe had learned, slowly and painfully, why the galaxy had threatened humanity. They had threatened because they feared change, because they protected old systems that benefited the powerful at the expense of the many, because they confused tradition with truth, and humanity had invited them in. Not to conquer them, not to dominate them, but to show them that another way was possible. Some accepted the invitation and transformed. Others rejected it and isolated themselves. A few fought and lost, but all eventually learned the same lesson. You cannot defeat an idea whose time has come. You can only join it or be left behind. Corvin stood on his balcony on New Havana, Maria beside him, watching the city lights glow in the evening. Somewhere out there, the Sovereignty was preparing to send observers. Somewhere else, isolated species were debating whether to maintain their walls or tear them down. Across a dozen worlds, children played together without knowing their species had once been enemies. The transformation was not complete. It might never be complete. There would always be resistance, always be those who preferred the old ways. But the direction was clear. The galaxy was learning, slowly, painfully, but learning. Corvin had been sent as a spy and became a citizen. Zekthan had been an enemy and became an ally. Millions had crossed boundaries that their ancestors thought were absolute. And humanity kept issuing invitations. Come see how we live. Judge for yourselves. Choose freely. We believe in you. It was the most powerful weapon any species had ever wielded. Hope. And hope, as the universe was learning, was contagious. The lights of New Havana glowed brighter as night fell. And somewhere in the darkness beyond, another species was preparing to accept humanity's invitation. The cycle would continue. The transformation would spread, one invitation at a time,